Welcome to Marketing Momentum on the Rise, the show where we burn off the noise, fix what's broken in your growth engine, and rebuild with clarity. I'm Sterling Phoenix, and if your funnel's stalled, your message is ghosting your buyers, or your team can't agree on what's actually working, this is the clarity pass you didn't know you needed. Let's go. Most startups don't fail because the product is bad. They fail because they get growth wrong. And here's the harsh truth. 90% of founders think they get marketing, but they don't. They think it's ads or followers or a launch party. They believe marketing equals get me leads. But growth is not a channel. It's a system. I've built and launched 15 startups, some that scaled, some that failed, and all of them left scars and lessons. And what I want to do today is cut through the BS, not the hacks you can find on Twitter, not the fluff you hear on stage, but the patterns, the traps, and the truths that will either save you years or quietly sink you if you miss them. So if you're a founder wrestling with how to go from 0 to 1, buckle in. This might sting a little, but I promise you, it'll also save you time, money, and a whole lot of wasted energy. So let's jump into Act 1, the myth of the big launch. Let's kill the first fantasy. The big launch is just a lie. Every founder has this great big picture in their head. They imagine the lights, the countdown clock, the site going live. They see themselves refreshing Google Analytics while traffic spikes. They imagine TechCrunch or Fast Company picking up their story. They're standing there in the glow of, we've arrived. It's a beautiful fantasy, but it's just that, a fantasy. Here's the truth. No one is waiting. No one cares. Your launch day is not the Super Bowl. It's a Tuesday in a crowded marketplace where your big reveal is competing with 10,000 other notifications people are getting that same hour. I've seen founders spend weeks, sometimes even months, obsessing over the launch moment, perfecting that press release, coordinating social media posts down to the very second, buying champagne for the team. They think the act of launching creates momentum. But here's the brutal reality. Launch day traffic is like fireworks. It's a bright flash, a few oohs and ahs, and then smoke. If you have an already built anticipation, if you don't already have people invested in what you're doing, the day after launch feels like a bad hangover. The spike disappears, you're left staring at your analytics dashboard wondering, now what? That's because launches don't create markets. Markets create launches. The founders who win are the ones who understand this. They've been telling their story for months before the product is even ready. They've been building the audience alongside the product. They've been talking to real humans, sharing early mock-ups, running betas, gathering feedback, making people feel like they're part of the journey. By the time they launch, they're not unveiling a secret. They're delivering on a promise they've been making for months. The people who follow them are already emotionally invested. They're not just customers. They're evangelists. Contrast that with the founder who hides everything until launch day. They think stealth mode is sexy. They believe secrecy equals suspense. But here's what actually happens. They push the button and no one shows up. It's like turning on the lights in an empty stadium. The seats are empty because they never invited anyone to come watch. The other piece of this myth is ego. Founders think the world cares about their moment. But the world doesn't owe you attention. Attention is earned. And you don't earn it by staging a countdown. You earn it by showing up, by telling your story early and often, by proving you understand the problem better than anyone else. So if you're banking everything on your launch day, I'll save you the heartbreak. You're already too late. Your launch doesn't begin when you flip the switch. It begins the first time you talk about your idea to someone who could actually benefit from it. If you want to launch strong, you need to start marketing long before launch. Build a wait list, share your messy drafts. Talk about the problem every single day until people associate you with the solution. Make them feel like they're watching something grow, not just witnessing a reveal. Because when you do that, launch day isn't a gamble. It's just a milestone, and milestones matter because they're proof of progress in a story your audience already cares about. A launch isn't just the beginning. It's the middle of the story you should have been telling for months. Now let's move on to Act 2. Here's the second truth. Your first 10 customers matter more than 10,000 clicks. Most founders miss this. They think scale equals success. They think that if you can just get 50,000 impressions or 10,000 website visitors, then the business will take off. So what do? They blow their first dollars on ads, they chase PR mentions, they buy tools and dashboards that make them feel like they're building something big. But clicks don't pay your bills. Customers do. At 0 to 1, the real goal is the first 10 humans who are willing to pay, complain, and stay. Let me say that again. Pay, complain, and stay. Because those 10 aren't just a little revenue. They're your reality check. They're the ones who test your story. They'll poke holes in your pricing. They'll tell you what features matter and which ones you wasted 6 months building. They'll ask questions you didn't prepare for, which means they'll show you exactly where your pitch is broken. Here's the key. They're not doing you a favor by saying nice things. They're proving something far more valuable. That real money changes hands when your product meets an actual need. I've worked with founders who've had hundreds of survey responses, thousands of beta signups, glowing feedback from friends and family. But when it came time to ask for the credit card, crickets. That's the danger of chasing clicks and likes. You confuse attention with traction. Your first 10 customers are traction. They're not just logos, they're teachers. They'll give you objections you can actually learn from. They'll highlight the difference between what you thought was the value and what they're actually willing to pay for. Here's the tough part though. If you can't convert conversations into customers, no channel in the world will save you. Not TikTok, not LinkedIn ads, not SEO. If one-on-one doesn't work, then one-to-many will only fail faster and burn more cash. So, what does that mean in practice? It means your job as a founder isn't to hunt scale. It's to hunt out conversations, coffee chats, demos, calls where you listen more than you pitch. Because those conversations with actual humans turn into the first 10 customers who anchor your entire business model. Those 10 are the foundation. They become your first case studies, your first testimonials, and your first advocates. If you manage to serve them well, they'll introduce you to the next 10, and then the next 10, and that's how compounding growth actually starts. Not with a big ad spend, but with conversations that convert into real commitments. So if you're measuring success by clicks, impressions, or likes in the early days, stop. That's just noise. Focus on the humans in front of you who can pay, complain, and stay. Stop hunting clicks and start hunting conversations with real humans. Act 3. And this is a big one. Founders fall in love with their own ideas. That's the trap. They fall in love with the vision, the clever feature, the product roadmap they sketched on the back of a napkin. And they convince themselves that if they just build it, the market will get it. They will see their genius. But here's the harsh truth. The market doesn't care about your genius. The market cares about its own pain. And it will only reward you if you solve that pain in a way they're actually willing to pay for. I can't tell you how many founders I've met who get stuck here. They build what they think the market wants instead of actually asking the market what it will actually buy. They chase cool over cash. Here's the test I use. If your friends or your coworkers say, "That's cool," it means nothing. Those are compliments. And compliments don't pay salaries. Compliments don't extend your runway. But if someone at least 3 degrees removed from you, not your best friend, not your mom, not an old colleague who doesn't want to hurt your feelings, If a near stranger says, oh yeah, I would pay $50 a month for this, and here's why, now you got a signal. That's validation. Too many startups die or burn through tons of cash building features no one asked for because they confuse the applause with adoption. They build for admiration, not for actual transactions. Real validation is not compliments, it's contracts, it's credit cards, it's commitment. So here's my challenge to you. Before you spend another week coding, another week polishing your deck, or another week telling yourself, we just need one more feature, stop. Go ask actual people who don't owe you loyalty 3 simple questions. Would you pay for this? How much? What would make you switch? And then shut up and listen. Don't sell them. Don't explain away their hesitation. Don't pitch harder. Just listen. Because in their hesitation is the truth about whether your product has legs or whether it's just wishful thinking. This is where founders get exposed. If the answer is hesitation, you don't have product market fit. You have a hypothesis with a hole in it, and no amount of code or branding is going to save it. I'll give you an example. One of the startups I worked with had this brilliant idea for a platform that automated a very manual business process. On paper, it looked incredible. The founder was so sure people would love it. They had decks, they had demos, they had features. But when we actually went out and asked potential buyers, not friends, not people already in their network, but true blue cold conversations, the answers were polite but lukewarm. Lots of that, that's interesting. Lots of, keep me updated. But when we pressed the real question, would you pay $200 a month for this? The room went quiet. And that told us everything. The founder didn't want to hear it. They wanted to keep building, keep perfecting, but compliments weren't going to keep their runway alive. Cash would, and there wasn't enough of it coming in. On the flip side, I've seen the opposite happen. A scrappy MVP, barely held together with duct tape, thrown in front of the right 10 people. And 3 of them actually pulled out a credit card. That's when you know. That's when you can start building with confidence. So let me land this for you. Building what you think the market wants is ego. Build what the market proves it'll pay for is entrepreneurship. If you're still living off of compliments, you're not building a company. You're rehearsing. Compliments won't keep your runway alive. Cash will. Act 4. Here's the truth that'll make product-obsessed founders uncomfortable. Distribution matters more than your product. I know. You're thinking, but we need to build something really great first. And you're not wrong. But here's where founders get it backwards. They spend 18 months perfecting features nobody asked for, convincing themselves that if they just build it good enough, customers will come. They won't. Because the graveyard of startups is filled with brilliant products that nobody ever knew existed. Perfect products with 0 distribution. Beautiful solutions that died in silence. Meanwhile, you got companies with mediocre MVPs, buggy, incomplete, barely functional, that are absolutely crushing it. Why? Because they built their distribution engine as aggressively as they built their product. Think about it. What's more valuable on day one? A product with 50 features and 0 customers? Or a product with 5 features and 500 people already waiting to buy it? I think the answer is obvious. But founders don't act like it. They keep polishing. They keep adding. They tell themselves, just one more sprint, we'll be ready. But ready for what? Ready for a market that doesn't even know you exist? Here's what smart founders do differently. They treat distribution as infrastructure, not as an afterthought. While they're building the product, they're simultaneously building an email list of potential buyers, partnerships with people who can refer actual customers, a content engine that establishes them as an authority on the problem that they're solving, and direct relationships with their first 50 ICPs through calls and demos and feedback sessions. They're not waiting for product perfection. They're building distribution muscle. So when the product is ready, even if ready just means good enough, they can flip the switch and actually reach people willing to pay money. I worked with a founder who spent 2 years in stealth building what he called the perfect platform. Beautiful code, elegant architecture, every edge case handled. Then he launched. Crickets. Why? Because he had zero distribution. No list, no partnerships, no content, no reputation. He'd built a Ferrari with no roads to drive it on. Now, compare that to another founder I know who launched with duct tape and wire. The product barely worked. And she'd been publishing weekly insights on the problem for a year. She'd built an email list of like 2,000 people. She had partnerships with 3 influencers in her space. When she launched, she did it with $50,000 in the first month with a pretty much broken product. Now that's the power of distribution. And here's the kicker. Your early customers, they don't really expect perfection. They expect progress. They're willing to deal with bugs if they believe you understand their pain and you're moving fast. But they can't be patient with a product they never discovered. So if you're 6 months into building and you haven't started to build distribution, you're setting yourself up to fail. It doesn't matter how good your product is if there's no one there to use it. So start now. Pick one distribution channel, content, partnerships, community, whatever fits your ICP, and build it like it's part of your core product, because it is. Distribution isn't like the cherry on top. It's the foundation. A mediocre product with great distribution beats a perfect product with none every single time. Now let's move on to Act 5. Here's the lesson most founders don't want to hear. Startup marketing starts with you. Not your first hire, not an agency, not some mythical growth hacker. It starts with the founders, period. But here's what I see over and over again. Founders think that their job is just product and fundraising. They assume marketing is something they'll delegate once the money's in or the product is live. They picture themselves as visionaries who stay behind the curtain while someone else tells the story. That works if you're running a Fortune 500 company with like 500 marketers. It does not work when you're trying to get from 0 to 1. At 0 to 1, people aren't buying your product yet. They're buying you. They're buying your story, your conviction, and your energy. And if you won't show up and sell it, why should anyone else believe in it? Think about the startups you respect the most, the ones that seem to come out of nowhere and then exploded. Almost always, you can point to a founder who became the face and the voice of the company really early on. They didn't wait for someone else to handle marketing. They were marketing. And no, that doesn't mean you need to be an influencer or a polished keynote speaker. It means you need to do the work of building relationships, sharing your progress, and putting your skin in the game where people can actually see it. That looks like posting consistently about the problem you're solving. Speaking at meetups, podcasts, small events, anywhere your ICP is actually paying attention. Networking, like your startup's life depends on it, because let's be honest, it does. Sharing updates in public so people feel really invested in your journey. People love a story. Founders who do this create a kind of momentum that's just irreplaceable before the product even launches. They build what I call narrative equity. People start following the story, not just the product. And when the product arrives, There's already this built-in audience that wants to see you win. Now, contrast that with the founder who hides, the one who waits until launch day to say, "Here we are." That founder has to spend twice as much money and twice as much effort to buy attention they could have earned for free simply by showing up and talking earlier. And here's the kicker: your early customers really want to know you. They want to believe in you. They don't care if your product is perfect. They care if you're real. They care if you understand their pain and if you're relentless enough to actually solve it. That trust doesn't come from a hired hand. It comes from you showing up unpolished and putting your actual reputation on the line. I've had founders tell me, "But I'm not a marketer, I'm not a speaker." And my response is always, "Tough." Neither were the 15 plus founders I've worked with at the very beginning. They learned to tell their story, they learned to connect, and that's why they survived. So if you're listening and you're still hiding behind the product, I'll make it simple. Get out there. Post, speak, DM, share, build in public. Let people invest in you as much as they invest in your idea. Because in the early days, there's really no separation. You are the brand. Marketing doesn't start with a hire. It starts with the founder who's willing to show up. Okay, Act 6. Here's the next trap founders fall into. They underestimate brand. They think a brand is a logo, a color palette, maybe some fonts they'll worry about later. They tell themselves, "Oh, we'll fix branding once we got traction." But let me tell you, if you wait until later, you've already lost ground. Because your brand isn't just like a decoration. It's not optional. Your brand is the first trust signal that determines whether people even give you a chance in the first place. At 0 to 1, you don't have awareness. You don't have proof. You don't have the luxury of years of reputation to lean on. All you have is how you show up. And how you show up, visually, verbally, emotionally, well, that's your brand. Think about it. When you see a company's website or a pitch deck, you make a judgment in seconds. Do they look credible? Do they look like they understand me? Do they look like they even know what they're doing? That kind of judgment happens before you even read the copy. And that judgment is brand. Here's the mistake I see founders make. They assume that they can DIY their brand because they're close to the vision. But the founder is usually the least qualified person to choose the colors, the logo, and the tone of voice. Why? Because you're so biased. You're building from what you like, not what the market needs to see. And that, well, that's simply dangerous. Because your brand, it's not for you. It's for your customers. The people who matter most in your early days are your early engagers. The ones giving you feedback, following your journey, signing up for your beta. Their perception of your brand matters more than your personal taste ever will. I'll give you an example. One startup I worked with had this super killer idea. Solid product, amazing product market fit, and a really great team. But their site, it looked like a student project gone wrong. Cheap logo, generic stock photos, inconsistent fonts. And they wondered why investors weren't taking them seriously. I'll tell you why. The brand simply didn't look like it could handle enterprise dollars or maybe like be trusted with anyone's dollars. So we cleaned up the visual identity, tightened up their story, aligned that voice, and suddenly the same investors who ignored them before started paying attention. Same product, same team, completely different perception. That's the power of brand. And here's what most founders miss. Your brand isn't just visual. It's voice, it's values, it's the courage to actually take a position in a noisy market. Playing it safe with your messaging, your opinions, your style, well, sometimes that's popular, but that's also startup death. Safe blends in. bold gets remembered. So if you're curious about survival, invest early in brand clarity. Don't just pick a logo off Fiverr and call it a day. Get your story straight. Decide how you want customers to feel when they interact with you and show up consistently in your posts, your decks, your emails, your product design. Every single touch point is part of your brand, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And please, don't kid yourself that you can brand later. Later doesn't come if you don't look credible enough now. Here's the bottom line. In 0 to 1, your brand is not just decoration. It's literally oxygen. Without it, people don't breathe long enough to even care about your product. Now, remember this. Your brand is not a decoration. It's the difference between being taken seriously or being ignored. Act 7. Let's talk about the 2 ways founders sabotage themselves when hiring their first marketing leader: chasing unicorns and misleveling the hire. First, the unicorn fantasy. Every single founder I've ever met has had this dream. If I can just find one rock star marketer, they'll solve all my growth problems. They picture this magical person who can do every single thing: strategy, copywriting, paid ads, PR, design, analytics, social. Maybe they'll code in the landing pages to a CMO, a growth hacker, a designer, and a copywriter, all in one sparkling body. It sounds perfect. And it is. But it's fiction. That person doesn't exist. And when founders choose this fantasy, they set themselves up and they hire up to fail. Because no one human can be excellent at all those things simultaneously. Not sustainably, at least, and not to the level of you need. I mean, there are some great full stack marketers out there, but you're asking too much. Now, I've watched this play out a dozen plus times. A founder makes their first marketing hire. They're so excited. They dump everything on that person's plate, sometimes day one. Figure out our go-to-market, write the website, launch ads, manage our social, build a content strategy. Oh, and can you make a sales deck for tomorrow's investor pitch while you're at it? At first, the marketer tries. They're scrappy, they crank, but quickly 1 of 2 things happens. They either burn out because that role is just impossible, or they fail because they can't deliver real excellence across a dozen different specialties. And when the founder says, marketing doesn't work, we need a better marketer. No, what you need is a realistic job description. But here's where it gets worse. Because when founders abandon the unicorn hunt, then they make the opposite mistake. They mislevel the hire. They go too junior or too senior, and both of those can kill you. Let me explain. Too junior. This happens when a founder hires a marketing coordinator or a generalist, someone really great at HubSpot or social media. They're super enthusiastic, affordable, and the founder thinks, perfect, this person will take marketing off my plate. Except they won't, because they can't. A junior hire can execute on tasks, but they can't set strategy. They don't know how to build the actual system. So what happens? The founder's stuck still owning all the strategy, the ICP definition, the messaging, the go-to-market planning, growth priorities, and now they're also managing someone else's execution. So instead of freeing you up, a too junior hire makes your job heavier. And then when the results don't come because you're flying without a real strategy, you blame the hire, not the setup. Now, on the other hand, how you hire too senior. This is where a founder thinks, okay, we need a heavy hitter. Let's get a corporate CMO. They'll find someone with a Fortune 500 background, beautiful resume, big brand logos. Sounds great, right? Wrong. Drop that person into a 0 to 1 startup and hit a wall really, really fast. Why? Well, because they've spent their entire career steering giant ships, not building out scrappy rafts. They're used to layers of support and big budgets and established channels. They're brilliant strategists, but they can't roll up their sleeves and execute without an army. So you end up with decks and frameworks and meetings, but no leads, no pipeline, no traction. Too junior, no strategy. Too senior, no scrappy execution. Neither works at zero. What you actually need is someone in the middle, a builder architect, someone who can think strategically and yet is absolutely down for getting their hands dirty, knows their way through it. They know how to lay the foundation, ICP, positioning, messaging, growth systems, and yet also know when to stop hacking it alone and bring in specialists. That hire doesn't look like a coordinator, and they also don't look like a corporate CMO. They look like a VP level operator with super great builder instincts. They can design the system and run the first campaigns, create the first assets, and then start building out that team and vendor bench as soon as there's actual proof of traction. When founders get this part right, everything accelerates. You're not drowning in tasks or wasting money on strategies that you can't actually execute. You're building a repeatable rhythm, building a growth engine. So here's the takeaway. Don't hire for cheap hands or impressive logos, either one. Hire for fit. Hire someone who knows how to build in the trenches, but also sees the chessboard. Someone who knows when to do it themselves and when to call in specialists. Because what founders really need isn't a unicorn or coordinator or corporate exec. What they need is a systems architect with builder's hands. Remember, you don't need a unicorn. You need a systems architect who knows when to build and when to bring in help. All right, Act 8. Here's the next myth to kill. The idea that growth comes from superheroes. Founders love this superhero story. They picture the genius marketer pulling all-nighters, cranking up campaigns, hacking funnels, and single-handedly saving the startup. It's dramatic. It's inspiring. It looks really great in a Netflix documentary. But in reality, superheroes don't scale. Systems do. I've seen startups burn out entire marketing teams because they built their growth on heroics. They depended on one person who was always on, always delivering. And for a while, it worked until that person hit the wall or left or simply just couldn't keep up with the pace. And then the whole thing collapsed because there wasn't an actual system. So here's the truth. A great marketing leader isn't really measured by how many tasks they can personally execute. They're measured by how quickly they can build a growth engine that runs whether they're in the room or not. That means clear positioning and a story that the whole team can rally around, a repeatable pipeline process that fields sales every month, reporting systems that make the ROI visible without guesswork, and a content engine that keeps shipping without bottlenecks. Systems, not heroics. Because when you build a system, your growth isn't fragile. You can plug in new hires, agencies, contractors, and the machine just keeps running. But if you rely on a superhero, every departure, every burnout, every vacation is a freaking crisis. Think about your product team. You'd never build software without systems. You'd never say, oh, we don't need processes. We just need one brilliant developer who never sleeps. Nope. You'd build version control, testing, release management. You build systems so the code doesn't depend on one person. Well, marketing is the same. The founders who win are the ones who stop asking for superheroes and start asking, what systems are we building here? This is where good marketing leadership really shines. They know how to jump in and do the work at first. Write the copy, launch the ads, run the webinar. But they don't stay there. They immediately start thinking, okay, how do I make this repeatable? How do I make sure this doesn't break when I hand it off? That's the difference between good founders and great founders too, Good founders keep asking for superheroes. Great founders ask for systems. So if you're leading a startup right now, ask yourself, are you leaning on people or are you leaning on processes? If one person vanishes tomorrow, would your pipeline dry up? Would your brand go silent? Would your reporting disappear? If the answer is yes, you have a serious superhero problem, and that's not sustainable. The solution is to demand systems, to measure your marketing not by effort, but by repeatability, to hire leaders who know how to codify, not just execute. But at the end of the day, the job of marketing leadership isn't to do all the things. It's to build the system that does. Remember, superheroes burn out. Systems scale. Clarity, momentum, no burnout. That's the rocket.